देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं। समस्तजनकल्याणे तदनुग्रहापयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सर्वगुरुं हरिहरम्। Before we begin, how many of you are in this session for the first time? The previous session we were not there. So we have seen in this Gita in practice, the first chapter of the Gita, there are three characters who are facing the same challenge, and each of them have a very different response towards the challenge. So the first chapter is that where one understands the need for the strength of the mind and understands the need of how each mind, according to its temperament, responds differently. So the first character was Dhritarashtra, and Dhritarashtra is a blind king from a position of strength where he could have taken an objective decision, the war would not have even happened. He, because of his attachment to the sun, does not do his duty, and so he becomes very weak, and he asks the question that what did my sons and the sons of Pandu do having assembled in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So he is a symbol of person who acts out of tamas, and so we find an ignorant person does not do the duty, becomes helpless, then goes through guilt, is victimized, and from position of strength comes down to weakness. Now we see the second character, which is Duryodhana. We have seen verse number 1, we spoke about the question of Dhritarashtra. We take the second one. Now when the question is asked by Dhritarashtra to Sanjay, Sanjay is his charioteer, and Sanjay is symbolic of someone who is very objective. Jaya means to win. Samyak Jaya, meaning one who has won over his senses and his mind. Such a person is called Sanjay. A very, very sattvic person he was. And he becomes a narrator of the Gita for Dhritarashtra. What is happening actually at the battlefield, not just the Gita. So he answers now. Let us read the second verse. Sanjaya Uvacha Drishtva tu Pandavanīkam Vyūಢam Duryodhanastada Acāryamupasangamya Raja Vachanamabravīt. So now Sanjay reports. Now Dhritarashtra had asked the question that what did my children and Pandu's children do? So first Sanjay starts with the description of the Kauravas. And he says that Drishtva tu Pandava Anikam. Having seen the army of the Pandavas, Anikam means the army, and their formation is called Vyūಢam. What did Duryodhana do? Duryodhana Stada Acharyam Upasangamya. He went to the Acharya, to Dronacharya, Raja Vachanam Abravīt, and he spoke like a king. When one goes to the teacher, one has to go humbly as a student. Duryodhana, first of all, why did he go to the teacher? He was scared from inside. Now when he is scared from inside, he actually went there to ask for a solution. But he did not go with that humility, with that open-mindedness. In fact, he went there with kingly pride. So Duryodhana, his character is like this. He was blinded by inferiority and greed. From childhood he has lived that way. Because his father was blind, his father had a deep inferiority complex that transferred on to the son. And always he had the need to prove himself. People who are strong don't need to prove themselves. People who feel weak and inferior, they want to assert, they want to prove. So here we find that Duryodhana, from his childhood he had that need to prove that he is greater than Bhima, he is stronger than the Pandavas, and he can do many things. So, blinded by inferiority and greed, when a person has inferiority, greed is inevitable. That is a very important point to understand. If I am content and I am happy with who I am, I don't have greed. When I feel inferior, then I feel that I need something to make myself complete. I need money, I need power, I need authority, I need position. Then I feel happy. And then also, it has to be incomparable. Nobody else should have that much. So that leads to greed. So he didn't want the Pandavas to do well. And as you know, from childhood he tried a lot of things. Even to kill Bhim, he poisoned him, threw him into the river. And many things he did. Tried to burn them in their wax house. Different things he did. Because he didn't want Pandavas to have any power, and he wanted to prove that he is superior and strong. These are the qualities of somebody who is very aggressive, very rajasic, very self-centered. And so due to jealousy, he made a lot of attempts on the lives of the Pandavas. Now self-image is something which plays a very vital role in anybody's life. And if you see here, the self-image of Duryodhana is so low. In his own eyes, he is not a very strong person. So he falls a victim of comparisons, becomes dependent on what people will say. Greed takes over his mind, jealousy takes over his mind. And so we find that Duryodhana, with all that, he has done so many wrong things that the next thing that happens to him is fear. All these negatives come because the person is not content and happy with who one is. When the inferiority comes in life, then I need something to hold on to. Now here he has done so many unrighteous things, even attempted on their lives, cheated the Pandavas, sent them into the forest. So he has done a lot of adharma. Then comes the point of ego. See, even such a person can transform if the person is ready to accept and change. Duryodhana not ready to accept. So he goes to his teacher not for accepting, but with false pride he goes there. And he acts very arrogantly. We will see what he says to his teacher. Let us see the third verse, where he tells his teacher. Earlier verse says, Raja Vachanam Abravit. As a king, with that kingly pride, he went there. And what did he say? Pashyaitam Panduputranam Acharya Mahatim Chamum Vyudham Drupada Putrena Tava Shishyena Dhimata. There is one PJ which says that light travels faster than sound. So there are some people who appear bright until they start speaking. So you just open their mouth and you know what is their level. He starts now, Duryodhana starts. What did he tell his teacher? Pashyaitam Panduputranam Acharya. He doesn't even call him by respect. He just gives Acharya, see these sons of Pandus. Mahatim Chamum, look at their army, great army they have. Vyudham Drupada Putrena, and who is leading them? Is Drishtadyumna, the son of Drupad. Tava Shishyena Dhimata. And he is your son, he is your disciple. How wise of you to train such people. In fact, the taunt is very powerful because Drupad's son was born to kill Dronacharya. And Dronacharya knew that. And yet, along with the Pandavas, Dronacharya, he trained them also. He trained Drupad also, Drishtadyumna also. Now Drishtadyumna has been made the chief of Pandavas. So he says, all your disciples, your favorite ones actually, the Pandavas, led by Drishtadyumna, are standing against you. And how wise of you that you trained all of them. And it's a very big taunt because Dronacharya is a Brahman. It's interesting is Dronacharya's character also. He is a Brahman. And he is supposed to only do the study of the Veda, teach that, do yajna, havan, all that. But he does not do his duty. Why? Because he is very poor. And his son Ashwathama has been fed rice water as milk for quite some time in his childhood. But as that son grew, he understood that this is not milk, this is rice water. And he started demanding that milk. Now, milk means you must have a cow. And that means that you have to have that much amount of prosperity. And Dronacharya so went around looking for somebody to give him a job. And that's where Bhishma took his services to teach the Pandavas and the Kauravas. The attachment to his own son, that is Ashwathama, made Dronacharya also compromise from his dharma. If you see, Mahabharata is a very interesting analysis of the characters. Each of them has fallen from their duty because of some attachment. Dhritarashtra has fallen because of his attachment to the son. Dronacharya also has fallen because of his attachment to the son. From being a Brahman, he comes down to teaching the art of warfare. And that also he should have done for a very short period of time. But once Ashwathama grew up, why did Dronacharya not leave all that? Because once the training of Pandavas, Kauravas is over, his job is done. But he didn't leave. You know why? Because if Dronacharya left from there, Ashwathama cannot make his mark. And all these Kauravas who are there, Shakuni and this Duryodhana, Dushasana, all of them, they will finish Ashwathama. Ashwathama can't even survive on his power. To protect him, he continued to be with the Kauravas, to be with that Kuru kingdom. So it's a big taunt on Dronacharya that you are supposed to be a Brahmana and you have done this. Tavashishyena Dhimana, that you have trained these people who are fighting against you only. And so, instead of asking for a solution, that is why Duryodhana here, he acts very arrogantly, goes and taunts his own teacher. So in his personality you see what happens. Inside there is a lot of fear, stress, anxiety. But his ego prevents him from accepting that. And then he goes to his teacher and makes a false show of strength. So when there is a disintegration that way, inside I am something, outside I am putting up a wrong mask. Today we all know that false mask is a major cause of stress and anxiety to everyone. Because I have to maintain two images there. So that disintegrated, he is very disintegrated, stressed, worried and very anxious. So he acts very, very rajasic way. And now we find here that just like Dhritarashtra etymologically meant somebody who is holding on to what doesn't belong to him. See the meaning of Duryodhana, such a nice meaning. Somebody who is so powerful that one is invincible. He cannot be defeated. That's the literal meaning of his name. And that way Duryodhana was invincible ultimately when he got trained under Balram. And in mace, no, Gada is called a mace.
Yeah.
In that mace fighting, nobody can match him. So he became very strong, very invincible. But the mind of his very deep. So all the adharma that he has done robs him of all that strength, and he has to continue to use adharma. That is the problem. The ego does not allow him to change from adharma to dharma. That is what happens once we start into the trap of adharma. Slowly one falls. Then even if there is a desire, it becomes very difficult to come back to track. So this is the character of Duryodhana, and hence one has to know that when I follow dharma, I am protected by that very dharma itself. So in our culture there is a line which says dharmo rakshati rakshita. One who protects dharma protects that person. Meaning you have that inner strength. Because one is following dharma, there is no disintegration in the mind. So this is the character of Duryodhana. Now the army of Pandavas is actually much smaller than the army of the Kauravas. So in number they are 11 Akshavani. Akshavani is the term used to measure the army. So a certain number of charioteers, certain number of elephants, certain number of soldiers makes up one Akshavani. So like that they had 11 Akshavani, the Kauravas, and Pandavas had only 7. And yet, why does Duryodhana feel incapable? Because of this adharma when he has followed, he feels very weak from inside. So that first chapter goes on to describe, Sanjay goes on to describe many warriors of the Kaurava army. So we will skip those aspects. In the 7th verse, he again taunts his teacher as Dvijottama. Asmakam tu vishishtaye tan nibodha Dvijottama. Dvijottama means the best of Brahmins. Meaning you are the best of the Brahmins, but you are doing the work of a Kshatriya. You have fallen from your own duty. Continuously he taunts. First he narrates the Pandava army heroes, then he narrates the Kaurava army heroes. We come to verse number 10, which is a very important verse here. Aparyaptam tadasmakam balam bhishmabhirakshitam paryaptam tvidame tesham balam bhimabhirakshitam. So this Sanskrit language has this beauty here. So aparyaptam meaning our army is aparyaptam, is almost limitless. And at the same time it is insufficient. It is limitless and yet it is insufficient, and it is led by Bhishma. But the army of the Pandavas is limited, paryaptam, but it is sufficient, led by Bhim. So his constant comparison with Bhim comes out now. Though technically it is Drishtadumna who is leading the Pandavas, he has an issue with Bhim. He is constantly comparing. So he says, led by Bhim, though their army is small, but that is enough to defeat us. That's his fear. And though our army is very large, I feel it is incompetent to fight. So he is taunting his own teacher that though your disciples are standing against you and they are your favorite disciples, you better fight the war properly. So rather than asking his solution for his problem, he is gone and he has taunted the teacher. So this is a passionate mind or a Rajasic mind's response to the same challenge. How does it respond? With greed and insecurity, with compromise and corruption. There will be fear, there will be insecurity, and that person is torn by stress, worry and anxiety. So the mind gets very disturbed. Now comes the third aspect. The third character is the character of Arjuna. Here we have verse number 12, where it is said that Bhishma blew the conch. Bhishma saw this Duryodhan taunting Dronacharya, and that has been going on for some time now. So Bhishma said, enough is enough now, let me blow the conch. So Bhishma blew the conch. Tasya Sanjayan Harsham Kuruvriddha Pitamaha Singhanadam Vinadyochehi Shankham Dadno Pratapavan. So this great Bhishma, he blew the conch. So in a battle, the side which blows the conch is actually the aggressor. So they are the attackers. So technically now Kauravas have attacked the Pandavas. So now when Bhishma blew the conch, everybody started. So drums and kettle drums and all the trumpets and so many things, they started blowing. And the entire atmosphere was filled with the sound of the war cry. Now is the entry of Arjuna. Very beautiful verse here, number 14. Tata Shvetairhayayukte Mahati Syandane Stitau Madhava Pandavashaiva Divyau Shankhau Pradadmatuhu So the description is Tataha, thus Shvetahaya Yukte, with the white horses, his chariot Mahatishyandane Stitau, sitting in a grand chariot. And the chariot of Arjuna is very special because the chariot is given by Agni Devata to him, and it can hold 9 bullock carts full of arrows. Such a huge chariot. There are 100 horses which have been given by a Gandharva called Chitrarath, and out of them these 5 horses are there. Actually 4, not 5. Only 4 horses are there. These horses can go anywhere, in the land, in the air, in the water. They are divine horses. And on the flag of the chariot is Hanumanji. Krishna is the charioteer. And this chariot, it can again the chariot is such that if the horses die, immediately another horse will get replaced. And the number which Chitrarath has given 100 will never become less. So he has divine chariot, that's what it means. Symbolically it means that Arjuna is someone who is like each one of us. We will come to the symbolism of the chariot a little later. But Arjuna is a man of action, and here both of them, Arjuna and Shri Krishna, they have been addressed as Madhava Pandavaschaiva. Madhava is Shri Krishna and Pandava is Arjuna. Both of them, they also blow their conch. This is the entry of Arjuna. Arjuna enters in a very grand way with Shri Krishna riding his chariot. They both are there and they both blow their conch. With this, the description of Arjuna starts here. Now the senses, the horses, the reins, horses represent the senses. So we have 5 senses. So you will find many places the picture has 5 horses. One interpretation of Gurudev Swami Chindananji is that actually there were not 5 horses, there were only 4 horses. Artists etc. take the liberty of painting it as 5 horses. And this analogy of the chariot has been taken from the Kathopanishad. The story of Nachiketa and Yamaraj, where Yamaraj, when he is giving the knowledge of the self, gives that entire knowledge of the chariot. So from there Vedavyasa has picked up that analogy. So 4 horses represent the 5 senses. Why they represent the 5 senses? Because eyes ears, nose, and the tongue. 4. And actually tongue is nothing but the skin itself pushed inside. So that is why the tongue and the skin are combined into one. And so there are 4 horses. So these 4 horses represent the 4 senses of ours, 5 senses of ours. The reins is the mind. The charioteer is the buddhi or the intellect. Arjun is the ego or the individual who is traveling in this chariot. And the chariot is the body. So the whole chariot is our personality. And in this chariot, what is important is each aspect must be tuned to the other. So the horses are there. Imagine if any one of the horses decides to go its own way, and each one of them decides to go its own way, the chariot can't move in any particular direction. It will just be wandering here and there. Same way our senses, if they are not focused, each one indulging in their own sense pleasure. So the horses are given the, what do you call that? Blinkers. So that they remain focused on track. They don't get distracted by what is happening around. And they only see the path. They don't see the grass, the trees and all that. So one who is having the senses that way controlled. So Shweta Haya Yukte, white horses means the senses of such a person are in control. The reins also must be strongly held by the charioteer. If the reins are weak, again no control of the horses. The charioteer must know clearly where to go. Suppose the charioteer is drunk, nothing can happen. And then the individual needs to know where to go, what is the goal of, what is the destination. And the charioteer must yoke the horses properly to the chariot, which is the body. If this much happens, then the chariot will move properly and go to the destination. If any one of them is not proper, there is a problem. In our personality, think about it. Instead of asking which is not proper, we should ask which is proper. Everything which is in sixes and sevens. Senses are not in our control. The reins are very, very loose. The mind is not in control. Intellect is drunk by all wrong values. So one believes that happiness is outside. To be angry is okay. You can't live with compassion. People will take you for granted. So many values which are twisted. So the values are wrong. The mind is not in control. The senses are not in control. And does the individual even know where to go? What is the goal of life? That also is not clear. So if all these factors are there, that chariot can't reach the destination. This is the analogy given in the Kathopanishad. About 6 verses are there which describe the chariot which is in control and how it will reach moksha, and a chariot which is not in control, how that person keeps coming back into the cycle of birth and death. So when we keep that Gita chariot in our house, earlier a lot of people used to have Gita chariot in their house. It is not just a decorative piece, it is to remind me that my senses must be controlled, mind must be aligned, intellect must have the right values, I must have a clear vision of goal of life. So it's a symbol of both the goal of life and the means. That's why one keeps that chariot in the house. Today people have very strange, funny notions. They will not keep such pictures. They will not even keep one Gita book in their house. Why? If you keep the Gita, there will be war in the house. If you keep Mahabharata, especially if a person is pregnant, you should not even read Mahabharata. So what happens is that all false notions. So one who knows this very clearly, that the chariot is a symbol. So Arjun, what is his response now? He is very confident in the beginning because for 12 years he has prepared himself. He did tapas, he invoked Lord Shivji, got Pashupatastra, many other astras he got, went to the heavens. He waited for this day. So very confidently he tells Bhagavan that, "O Lord, you place the chariot between the two armies." So in verse number 21 and 22, he confidently tells the Lord, Arjuna Uvacha Senayor Madhye Ratham Sthapaya Mechyuta Yavadetan Niriksheham Yodhukaman avasthitan Kaimaya sahayodhavyam Asmin rana samudyame. So he says, Arjuna says, Senayor Bhayor Madhye, between the two armies, Ratham Sthapaya me Achyuta. Oh Achyuta, please place my chariot. Interesting name of Krishna is used, Achyuta. Achyuta means to fall. Achyuta means one who never falls. And Arjuna is about to fall. His downfall is going to begin now. So Vyasa is used a very important name, Achyuta. And Bhagavan is Achyuta. He never falls. He never falls into ignorance, into negative tendencies, attachments. So he says, you please place the chariot between the two armies. Where you should place it? Between the two armies. For how long you should place it? Yavadeka niriksheham. So long as I don't see everybody who has come to fight the war with me. Yodhukaman avasthitam. I want to see Kaimaya Sahayodhavya. Who are these people who have come to fight me? With that confidence he says, that who are these people who have come to fight me? Let me see. I want to have an overview. And he comes in between two armies to see all around him. Otherwise from where he is standing he could have seen. For him to see the Kauravas is not a problem. But he comes in between the armies to see on both the sides, that who are on these two sides. Many times that has to be done. When we have to take a decision, we have to come into the objective field. Neither here nor there. In between, to review both, then take a decision. So Arjuna now he says that as long as I don't see who are these people, so long you keep the chariot there. Till now, Arjuna had no problem. Till the chariot was taken there, Arjuna had no problem. Now Bhagavan's humility it is. Just imagine that Bhagavan is the Lord of the universe and he is playing the role of the charioteer. Now when he plays the role of a charioteer, he plays that role to perfection. He actually takes the chariot, places it between the two armies. And if you see in the entire first chapter, there is no other words that Bhagavan has spoken except these 5 words. When he tells Arjuna that having placed the chariot, he tells Arjuna. What does he tell Arjuna? You see verse number 25. Bhishma Drona Pramukhatah Sarvesham cha Mahikshitam Uvacha Partha Pashyaitan Samavetan Kuruniti. So Bhagavan said, Uvacha. What did Bhagavan say? Partha, O Partha, Pashyaitan. Look at these. Samavetan, assembled. Who? Kurun. All these Kurus. He could have easily said, look at all these soldiers. But one word Kuru that he used, Arjuna was overwhelmed by his attachments towards his own family members. But he didn't say that look at these soldiers. He said look at these people who are the Kurus, meaning these are your people. And that suddenly triggered the whole collapse of Arjuna. Not that Bhagavan intended to have that collapse, but Arjuna had never prepared himself for that particular eventuality. He prepared himself with all the skills outside. But he never worked on his attachments. He never visualized that this day will come when he will have to kill his people. Earlier he had defeated them. But now it is the time where he has to kill. Suddenly, when Bhagavan said that look at all these gurus, it struck him like anything that, oh God, I will fight my people and kill them. So the moha in him, the attachment in him overwhelmed his thinking. He lost this clarity that he was a soldier to protect Dharma. So we see in Arjuna's character that he starts shivering, he starts sweating, he can't stand. That mighty warrior, what happens to him? What does he see there? Instead of seeing the soldiers, he sees what? He sees Pitrulatha, that is great grandfathers and fathers and his own acharya and grandfather and his own teacher, all the relatives, he starts seeing them and he is completely overwhelmed by emotion. When such a thing happens, there is a tendency of the human mind to justify it giving one glorious reason. So you see in this verse number 28, he says, Tan samikshya kaunteya sarvan bandhun avasthitan kripaya paraya vishta. When he saw all his relatives there, he was overwhelmed by compassion. Kripaya. What compassion? Paraya, supreme compassion. Vishidam idam abbravi, and with complete sorrow in his heart, this is what he spoke. So now this is the tendency of the human mind to justify. There are two types of compassion. One is the compassion which is genuine compassion. Another is the compassion which is called misplaced compassion, where you don't need to be compassionate. Unnecessary one is going out of the way to be compassionate. In fact, that is taking one away from one's duty. Like in Arjuna's case, he is supposed to kill. Those forces who are adharmic, it is his duty to kill them. Whoever they may be his own people, it doesn't matter, but right now they are on the wrong side doing adharma and his duty is to finish them. Now there he suddenly becomes compassionate, they are my own people, let me have compassion and let me not fight with them, let me run away from here. All that if it starts, it's like a soldier in the army suddenly feels compassionate out of humanitarian concern, I don't want to kill these people who are the soldiers of the opposite army. Now is that compassion justified? It has to be eliminated. Suppose a doctor says that you have this cancerous growth in your leg, but how can I cut you? It's your leg after all. I feel so compassionate for you, so I won't cut the leg. Then what happens? Person will die. So what has to be done has to be done. There your wrong excuse of compassion is actually misplaced compassion. And many times that happens in life. That our compassion is not the real compassion, it is a misplaced compassion. Because of some attachment that I have, I don't want to take a stand. I don't want to fight. I don't want to hurt. And then I will say, I don't want to hurt, he is my own person. It's okay, I will bear the pain. It's all misplaced. Gita very clearly says that what is your duty, you have to do. And that is one of the reasons why a doctor is not allowed to operate on their own relative. Because suddenly the attachment will come, the knife will shake, the hand will shake, you can't operate. So attachment is something which comes in our compassion. One has to find out how to find out whether the compassion is genuine or misplaced. Find out if there is any attachment behind it. If there is an attachment behind it, it will be misplaced most of the times. A genuine compassion has no attachment behind it. You see somebody who is poor, suffering, does not have food or clothes, And you feel compassionate and you feel, poor person, why is suffering so much? I have something, let me give. Now there is no attachment. You are genuinely moved by the concern. Second way to know whether it is misplaced or actual compassion is, what would anybody else have done in that situation? If you start thinking from the other person's standpoint. Suppose a judge has to give an order to his own son who has done something wrong. Now suddenly their compassion, if it comes up in the heart, is because of attachment only. Objectively speaking, what would anybody else have done? Is my conclusion according to that? Or am I getting carried away just by my own whim and fancy? What is my duty? Whether it is taking me away from. Real compassion does not take us away from duty, it takes us only a step higher. Misplaced compassion takes us away from the duty and takes us lower. It makes us compromise, actually. So Arjun here is in that situation where the compassion is misplaced and he is compromising from his duty and then giving justifications. So many times the people, we do that way. We don't logically come to a conclusion. We come to a conclusion already and then support it by logic. That is what Arjun has done here. He has already concluded that these are my people and I can't kill them. Now he starts his excuses. So he started shivering, sweating. That description comes now. And Arjun himself described what is he seeing. Till now Sanjay described that he was seeing his grandfather and teacher and relatives and kith and kin. Now Arjun describes. In 28th verse he says, Arjuna uvacha Drishtve mam svajanam Krishna Yuyutsum samupasthitam. He says, I am seeing my own people. Drishtve mam svajanam. These are my people. Yuyutsum samupasthitam. They have come here to fight with me. So he suddenly gets shaken up that, oh my God, how Dhritarashtra used Mamakaha, that these are my people and they are Pandu's children. Same thing Arjun is using, these are my own people. So all the three characters in the first chapter, if you see, are overcome by attachment. Duryodhan and Dhritarashtra, attachment to his own son. Duryodhan, attachment to power, possession, image. Arjun, again attachment to people and relatives and attachment to what other people will say, that will come now. So all the three are totally overwhelmed by attachment. And all the three are not able to do the duty. And it is very beautifully put that all the three have one person to whom they go for clarity. Dhritarashtra goes to Sanjay. And in fact, Sanjay, the way in which he describes the whole Mahabharata war, if Dhritarashtra had any sense and detachment little bit also, he would have immediately stopped the war. But he was fully overwhelmed by his attachment. So Sanjay could not help Dhritarashtra. Duryodhan, he goes to Dronacharya, doesn't even open up his problem. So even if Dronacharya wants to help him, he can't do anything. And now Arjun, he has Sri Krishna. Luckily, we see Arjun surrendering to Sri Krishna in the second chapter. But before that, he gives justifications, one by one. So this Arjun, who was a very strong, mighty person, now what does he say? He says, Sidanti mama gatrani Mukham cha parishusyati Vepathuscha sharire me Romaharshascha jayate. If you translate this in English, you can get all the symptoms of somebody who is nervous before an exam, before an interview, before a public speech. What happens? Siddhanti mama gatrani. My limbs are failing. I can't even stand. Mukham cha parishushati. My mouth is becoming dry. Vepatuscha sharire. My entire body is shivering. Roma harshascha jayati. My hair is standing on the end. I am sweating. I can't handle this. Then he says, Gandhi Vamsramsate Hastat.
Gandhi Vamsramsate Hastat.
Vakchaiva paridahyate.
Vakchaiva paridahyate.
Nacha shaknomyavasthatum.
Nacha shaknomyavasthatum.
Ramativa cha me manaha.
Ramativa cha me manaha.
See, it is said that Gandhi was such a bow that except Arjun, nobody can even lift that bow. He is the only person capable of holding that bow straight and using it. People can't even lift that bow from where it is. And that mighty warrior is such a weakling now. You see here, Gandivam Samsate. Gandiva fell from his hand. He can't even hold it. Tvakchaiva paridahyate. My skin is burning all over. Nacha shaknomi avasthatum. I can't stand. Ramativa cha me manaha. My mind is, I am feeling dizzy. My mind is in confusion. All these symptoms are what, you know? These are called psychosomatic symptoms. Nothing is there outside. Any actual cause is there for Arjun? It all is imagination, confusion in his head. It is not that physically he has been affected by some germ or a bacteria and then he has collapsed. Nothing. His entire psychosomatic experience. And so you find Arjun here, that mighty warrior who could fight with both his hands, can fight when blindfolded, that mighty warrior collapses. And you will find that he had tears in his eyes. He comes down from the chariot and he is facing Lord Krishna, saying, I don't want to fight. One place somebody defined, what is tears? So tears are that hydraulic force by which masculine willpower is defeated by feminine water power. So that Arjun, a strong man, becomes such a weakling. But important part is Arjun was straightforward. Arjun means one who is straightforward. Arjun. So he didn't hide. He didn't have a false ego like Duryodhana. He didn't say that, oh my God, both the armies are standing and in between I am there, now I am collapsed here. What will the people think? Kya ho gaya Arjun ko? Nothing. He was feeling what he was feeling. So at least there was no disintegration in his mind and his external behavior. So that Arjun, when he collapsed and he started justifying that he is overwhelmed with compassion, now he gives excuses of why he should not fight the war. See, these are not the reasons because of which he has decided not to fight the war. He has already decided not to fight the war because of his attachment. Now he gives the reasons. And some of these reasons are very nice. These are the reasons which we may give to escape from any challenge. So the first reason he gives is Nimittani cha pashyami viparitani keshava. 31st verse. So he says, I am seeing omens. This is not the right time, Swamiji. Like that. So he's telling Krishna, dekho, planets are not in the right position. There are wrong omens which are happening. Now omens are happening same for everybody. This fellow interprets it as unnecessary. So he says, Nimittani cha pashyami, nachashyayon pashyami hatva svajana mahadev. I don't see any point in killing my own people in the battle. He prepared for 13 years for what? For this day. And now he says, I don't see any point in killing my people. First of all, the war was not for killing his own people. The emotional disturbance has completely clouded his thinking. So Gurudev used to tell us, let not the storms of your heart cover the sun in your head. So the heart has so much of storms, attachment. It is totally disturbed. So his clarity that he is there to protect Dharma is gone. And hence we find Arjun giving one by one excuses after that. First he says omens and signs are not proper. Then he says, I am physically incapable. That you saw in the last two verses. I can't stand, I can't hold my row, how will I fight this war? You know, I am physically incapable. Suppose a child doesn't want to go to school, what the child will do? Stomach ache, mommy, I am having migraine, I can't go. If somebody is hesitant to start business, you know, they will always tell you like that. Swamiji, recession is going on, it's not the right time. Can't start the business right now. After 6 months you ask them, you know, government is very unstable. Elections are going to happen now. We don't know who will come to power. Now the right time to start. Okay, now the government is gone. Now why don't you start? I can start, but you know, I don't have any partners yet to start. Some excuse. So outside signs are not proper, omens are not proper, physically I am incapable. Then he expresses his own attachment. So his attachment to people, saying that, you know, why should I fight and kill my own people just for the sake of kingdom? So that verse number 32 to 35, he explains that. Kim no rajyena govinda, kim bhoge jivitena va. And how can I enjoy the kingdom? How can I kill my own people? What is the point in doing all that? That we do everything so that we can enjoy with our people. If my own people are dead. And look, if you look at his arguments, no, you will find yes, true.
Yeah.
It's correct. What Arjun said, perfect. Then what is the point of fighting this war when all his relatives are going to die and the kingdom, in fact Duryodhana when he dies at the end, he laughs and laughs and laughs before he dies. He laughs at Yudhishthir. He says, Arey Yudhishthir, I pity you because you know we have fought the war and we are dying and we will attain Veer Swarga. But you have to handle this entire society which has got destroyed. You have to live here, you have to rebuild the whole thing, so I pity you. Saying that Duryodhana died. So many people think that way, you know, what is this? What Arjun said was correct. That the reason for which you fought, after you win, who is there to celebrate your victory? And actually if you see in both the sides, who was left? From that side of Kauravas, only one Kripacharya and one Ashwatthama were left. And from the side of Pandavas, only the 5 Pandavas and Draupadi was left. And that son, that is Abhimanyu's son, Parikshit. Only that much is left. And Krishna. Everybody has died. So one feels that, yeah, what is the point? Arjun said correctly, that why should I fight? When my own people, all of them will die, then what kind of enjoyment? It's misery, no? So his argument is very strong. So he says, because of that, etam hantum ichhami. In fact, in 35th verse, he goes one step ahead. He says, not only I don't want to kill them, it is better that they kill me. Natopi Madhusudana. Even if they kill me, I don't want to fight them. Api trailoke rajasya heto kindu mahimrite. So he gives his emotional attachments. Then he gives intellectual arguments also. He says, what will I get? I will only get sin, papa. I will get the sin, not only I will get sin of killing people, but I will get double the sin. Because I am killing my own people. So he says, nihatya dharta rashtrana ka pritisya janardana papameva ashraye dasman tatvaitan atatayi. That's a very important word. And atatayi is called as a felon. Somebody who has completely done all kinds of injustice is called as an atatayi. And technically it is said that anyone who has done any one of these 6 is called as an atatayi. What are the 6 crimes that are done by an atatayi? Set fire to the house, or poison the person, or with a sword in hand tries to kill him, steal his wealth, steal his land, steal his wife. If anybody has done any one of them, that person is called as an atatayi, somebody who is a felon, who has violated the basic morality. And the duty of a Kshatriya is that the Kshatriya must kill such an Atatani. It's not that anybody can kill. The duty of a Kshatriya is that he should kill that Atatani. And not to kill that Atatani is actually the sin. So that is what the Gita, the Smritis, they tell us, that if you don't eliminate a felon, you are falling from your duty. That will get you more sin. And what the Shastra says, any one. Now here the Kauravas have done all the 6. So he actually is using the arguments of the Shastra but going against it. He knows that they are the felons, they are Atatayins, they are people who have committed all the 6 known, what do you call it? Crimes. He should be killed, they should be killed. But he says, no, how can I kill them? I will get papa by killing. This is called moha. You know, when moha comes into our mind, what is true will appear as false, and what is false will appear as true. That is the power of delusion or moha. So if I am walking on the road and there is a rope there, if there is no proper light, I may see that rope as a snake. In the desert, the traveler sees mirage. It's actually mirage, there is no water there. That is called delusion, moha. So that way, Arjun here is completely clouded. And when a person has moha, a person cannot think clearly. And when you can't think clearly, that is one problem. But then you indulge in wrong thinking and think that that is right. And so Arjun is a victim of that moha. So he gives intellectual arguments in 36 and 37, and he says that let them only kill me. Ahimsa is supreme dharma. Why should I even kill my own people? So he quotes ahimsa and all that. And finally, he gives the spiritual reasons where he speaks about that how the whole society will get ruined, and how when the men, they all of them die, there will be nobody to perform the rituals. And those days the society was that way, that you require the men to perform the shraddha and all that. And now all of them will die, so those things can't be done. The offerings to the Pitrus will not be done, and Pitrus will also fall. So he says, I will incur sin, and the ancestors will also fall. The entire lineage of the family will get destroyed. Because there is no male member now. So how will the family lineage go ahead? So family lineages will get destroyed. There will be social immorality which will prevail, because the ratio of man and woman will become completely imbalanced. And here the imbalance is terrible, because soldiers of both the armies are destroyed. So he says, it's very terrible that whole society, there will be a lot of immoralities. The culture will completely get destroyed. And so giving all these reasons, he says, enough now. I don't want to fight. So at the end of this first chapter, you find in the 47th verse, Arjun says, I don't want to fight. So Sanjaya concludes that chapter by saying, Sanjaya uvacha evam uttva Arjuna sankhye rathopastha upavishat visrujya sasharam chapam shoka samvigna manasaha. Sanjay says, in this way, having said all this, evam uttva Arjuna sankhye, in the war, rathopastha upavishat. He comes down from the chariot and he sits down. What does he do? Visrujya sasharam chapam. He throws away his bow and arrow. Shoka samvigna manasa. His mind is filled with grief and he collapses there. So it's symbolic that a person does not want to put forth their effort in facing the battle of life. One wants to become an escapist. And Arjun, with this condition, is completely dejected and he sits down there completely shattered. That mighty warrior who could not be defeated now becomes such an escapist. He falls down, dejected, depressed, fully. What happens further and what is the character of Arjun? What is the cause of his breakdown? Think about it and come. One cause you know is attachment, but there are deeper causes for it. Think about it and come. Last Monday we didn't have a session. So can we do this Monday?
Yeah.
Is there anything?
Same time.
Same time? Yeah, so this next Monday we will do and we will finish the analysis of Arjun's character. So same time, 7:15 to 8:15, we will have the class this Monday. Anybody wants to take the Gita book? There is a small book which is there for your chanting, and there is a Holy Gita which is a commentary. Both are there that you can take. And we also have a form, a registration form. For those of you who have come for the first time here, okay, so Monday when you come, those of you who are new, who haven't filled up the form, can just fill up the form. That is just for us to have your data so that if there is any change in plan or anything, we will need to inform on SMS. Om Purnam 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 Purnam